Hello and a very warm welcome to the Analyst dated 7th March 2026, brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi, wherein we'll be covering the 7 set of current affairs issues which are featured in today's newspaper. The handout of this very discussion has been pinned in the comment section below for your future reference. Now, beginning with the analysis section, recently we are witnessing rising instances of digital addiction. So in this particular backdrop, certain states are planning to impose a ban when it comes to use of social media by the children. So in this particular backdrop, we'll try and understand the need of such a policy measure and what is the feasibility of such a policy measure in the long run. Moving on to the second topic, herein we'll try and understand that what are the causes of rising feminization of agriculture in India, what are the challenges faced by the women farmers in India, and how India can move beyond symbolism, that means giving a legal and a formal recognition to the women who are engaged in the agriculture sector as farmers. Moving on to the prelim pointer segment, herein we will be covering the 5 set of current affairs issues which are more relevant for your upcoming prelims examination. So we will be doing the value addition which would be relevant from prelims perspective. So stay tuned. Now let's begin with the first topic, which is dealing with this particular debate, that should use of social media be banned for minor children or not. This particular topic we can associate with GS paper 2, government policies and their effect, and the vulnerable sections of the population, especially the children. Now, what is the context? So recently, Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh, they have stated that they are going to impose this ban when it comes to use of social media, especially for minor children. Now, when it comes to Karnataka, therein the government has stated that they are going to impose this ban for the children aged below 16 years. And when it comes to Andhra Pradesh, they have stated that they are going to enforce this particular ban for the children below the age of 13 years. Okay, now the first thing that we need to understand in this particular respect is, what do I mean by social media first of all? Social media is basically a platform where we are able to interact with other people, we are able to exchange our ideas, the information that we have. Okay, we create content, we share the content, and we are doing all these interaction through virtual medium. Okay, so we have virtual communities and networks. It is basically a collection of websites and apps. Example, we all know Facebook, Instagram, your LinkedIn, etc. Now, when I say that the state is going to put a ban when it comes to use of social media, especially for minor children, what do I mean by this? It simply means that if the state is saying that a person below age of 16 years is not allowed to use the social media, that means that a person who is aged below 16 years cannot open a social media account, okay, cannot create any content or maintain account on social media platforms, and we are shifting this responsibility when it comes to the social media platforms, that they have to ensure that a person below this age is not using their website. And for this, the social media platforms would have to do age verification. And how do they do that? They are able to do that by using the government issued IDs, for example Aadhaar card, PAN card, through the facial recognition technology or through biometric verification. Okay, so this simply means that we are putting this burden of age verification onto the social media companies. That is what we mean when we say social media banning. Now let's look into some data facts. This would give you the insight itself that why we are discussing this need, okay, to impose the ban. First and foremost, if you go by the 2023 report, that is Internet in India report, which is released jointly by this data analytic company, that is Kantar, and Internet and Mobile Association of India. Now this report strikingly points out that majority of the internet users that we have in India, they are primarily using the internet for watching video content, consuming audio video content, OTT platforms, etc. As you can see, 86% of the internet users are using for this purpose. A very small fraction, just 3% of the users are using this internet for online learning purposes. And on an average basis, people are spending 1.5 hours while scrolling through internet. Then if you go by 2025 report released by again these two entities, it points out that we have a wider internet user base in India, which is 950 million in 2025. And here you can see it is majorly the younger audience which is using the AI tools. And 61% of the internet users are actually consuming short video content, that is your reels and all. And this negatively impact your focus span. Okay, and that is the reason today's generation, it is very difficult for them to sit continuously for 2 hours at a stretch. Imagine how you're going to manage when you're writing the mains paper for 3 years continuously. So build that practice nowadays. That is the reason we time and again point out, please give mocks. Please, put that time limit on you that before 2 hours you're not going to get up from your study table. Okay, so this is the result of this scrolling constantly that you people do when it comes to reels and all. And when it comes to India, we have 500 million active social media users. This has been highlighted by data reportal. Now, let's just delve into the need of imposing such a ban when it comes to children per se. First and foremost, this year economic survey has rightly pointed out that what we are witnessing is among the children is rising digital addiction. And this you can validate by the recent triple suicide of 3 sisters that we witnessed in the Ghaziabad in 2026 itself. Why? Because the parents denied them the use of mobile phones. And all these 3 sisters, they were not going to school after the COVID-19 pandemic, and they were completely hooked to this Korean task-based love games. When it comes to today's, children, what is happening is they are hooked to social media platforms. Why? Because nowadays the social media platforms are using algorithms. What do I mean by algorithm driven content? Once you like one type of video, similar content would be coming in front of your eyes, so that you get completely hooked to that social media website and you cannot focus on the necessary things that you have to do, like for example studying, meeting your real life friends and all. Okay, and that is leading to fatal behavioral shift. Then this is negatively impacting the mental health. Nowadays we have seen this, that if you are able to do away with the distractions, you will be able to get your name in the final merit list, because nowadays distractions are very much. If you are on social media, time and again constantly you will be getting notification from your Instagram handle, you will be getting notification from Twitter, from Facebook, etc. Okay, your emails would be filled by that only, notification. So how you are going to focus upon the necessary work that you have to do, for example office work, for example the study thing that you have to do. Okay, so this has been rightly pointed out by economic survey, that how it is negatively impacting the mental health, because it is creating anxiety and stress among the children. Because of this social media platform, what is happening is constantly the children nowadays are looking for external validation. Okay, so that is the reason why sometimes they don't have that self-confidence. If somebody tells them something negative, they lose their self-confidence. That should not happen. Okay, but this is something which is happening. Children nowadays are suffering from stress, anxiety, and they're constantly looking for external validation, which is not good for your psychological well-being. Then we need to prevent cyber grooming. What do I mean by cyber grooming? We cannot let the abusive or the hated content which is there on the social media platform to shape a child's understanding related to relationships and when it comes to sexuality. This you can validate by giving the example of Grok AI tool, which was vehemently criticizing for producing sexually abusive content, especially when it comes to children related images and women related images. Okay. Then for restoring academic focus, which is something which the children should focus upon, this is need of the hour, because time and again which we are entering into doom scrolling, constantly doing scrolling of the reels and all. This is negatively impacting our attention span, so that needs to be addressed. Okay, whenever you're using the social media platform, at least set a timer for yourself or track how much time you are investing when it comes to social media platform. That is again something that you can do. And we need to promote children to build more real life connections rather than building the friendship and all on the Facebook and on Instagram and all. Okay, because these are the real friends, the real life connections would be the one which would be there to provide the emotional support which you actually need when you are going through the down phase of your life. And this would also help us to deal with the sedentary lifestyle which is on a rise among the children also. I remember during my childhood, when I used to come from school, I used to take an afternoon nap, and then physical activity was a daily routine. We used to go to the playground and we used to play. Okay, but nowadays the children are so much hooked to online gaming, social media and all, that we have become the second country when it comes to obesity, especially among the children. This has been recently pointed out by the World Obesity Atlas report of 2026. We are right behind China. So that would also be addressed. Now, what are the concerns? Even if we go with the ban, what are the problems? First is, you need to understand that the children nowadays are more technological significantly advanced as compared to the regulators. Okay, we took a lot amount of time to learn, okay, how to put a post on the Facebook and on Instagram and all. So it took us a lot time. But nowadays you must have seen that the children who are born, who are not even 2 years of age, they know that how to scroll the reels and all. Okay, so when it comes to children, they are more tech savvy as compared to the regulators who are in their late 60s. Now, children, they know how to use virtual private networks. What are these virtual private networks? They actually help you bypass the regulation which is there in your region. If certain content you are not allowed to see in your particular state or in your particular country, you can access that using virtual private networks. Okay, because the connection between your device and the VPN server would be private and it would be encrypted. The forces, regulatory forces, would not be able to know that what kind of data is being transmitted from your device and what kind of data has been received by your device. And why the security forces are not able to do that? Because this VPN thing allows me to do IP address masking. That means even if the regulatory authorities try to figure out that which is the device and what is the location of this device which is actually accessing this particular website, in place of my device IP address, the IP address that would be shown would be of the VPN server. So it helps me in IP address masking also. Okay, and since it is very difficult to enforce such bans, that is the reason South Korea, which has earlier introduced the Cinderella law, which actually imposed ban when it comes to playing online games, especially the time when the children are supposed to sleep, that is midnight to 6 a.m. But because of ineffective implementation, ultimately this law was done away with, okay, in 2021. Then there is privacy breach risk also. I right now told you when I say that we have to ban the use of social media platform for children. So the social media platforms have to do age verification. For that, if I am providing my PAN card, if I am providing my Aadhaar card, my private details is being exposed to a private company. Okay, my personal details are being exposed to a private company, and that data which the social media platform is currently using for age verification, that data they can use it for selling me some other services because I am a customer at the end of the day for them. Okay, so that threatens my privacy at the end of the day. Then there's a mismatch between the ban and we are not taking care of the adolescent needs in this respect. There are certain segments of the population, for example disabled, LGBTQ community, who at times are not able to get that vital support in their surrounding. They are able to get that support through the online medium, because through online medium, so social media platform, they are able to get and connect with people like them. Okay, so they are able to get that vital support. And we cannot negate this fact that nowadays the online platforms are needed for educational purposes also. So if we are enforcing complete ban, that is a problem. We are not taking into account the advancement that we have done, for example adaptive learning, which is a new reality nowadays. Okay, then this could worsen the gender divide that we have currently right now. If in the name of law we say that children below a certain age would not be allowed to access social media platform, what the parents would be doing in India, they would be snatching the mobile phones from the female child, and this might impede her access to online courses, her social mobility in the future. So that is going to widen the gender divide, and this would reduce the livelihood opportunities also in the future. That is what experts have to say. And lastly, if we go for blanket ban, then this could push the children towards darker corners. They might end up using dark web. They might end up using platforms like Telegram, wherein you have extremist group related content as well. Okay, various reports have pointed out that fact. So what is the middle path? How we ensure that we prevent the digital addiction that we are seeing among the children, and at the same time we ensure that the children are able to use the online platforms for educational purposes also. How do you strike that balance and they are not exposed to cyberbullying and all? So first and foremost, we need to ensure safety in the design itself. Okay, when the apps are being designed, there should be safety inbuilt in the design, the algorithms that we are using. So harmful content should be automatically being blocked. For example, sexually violent content, sexually abusive content, pornography related content, or something which is false news, or something which is related to hatred and all, that should not be something which should come in front of the children. Okay, so that default setting when it comes to this blocking of high risk category content should be there in the apps itself. Then we can learn in this respect from Singapore. In Singapore, the apps from where the platforms from where you download the apps, therein they have to ensure strict age verification, and only then, once you ensure that okay, you are above a certain years of age, then only you will be allowed to download that particular app, okay, from the Play Stores and all. Then we need to build a healthy media ecology. Basically, we are trying to tell that in the school itself, that cyber safety practices, okay, should be taught to the children. So we need to come up with a digital wellness curriculum, and in this respect we can learn from New Zealand's online safety in school model, wherein they are not just telling the children's, okay, that what are the safe cyber practices, how you can prevent instances like cyberbullying. They are also engaging the parents also, because parents, they don't have this much of time, especially when both are working, and it could happen that one of the partner is not that much educated, because when it comes to the parental control, that PDF is very long. So what the schools in New Zealand they are doing, they are conducting a short workshop with the parents to tell them that how they can enforce the parental control, how they can use those parental control which are provided in the devices itself, and they can ensure setting healthy boundaries. I remember one of my house help, her child was constantly playing online games and all, and she was not able to control her child. So I told her about the parental control, but she was not able to, see this thing that the parental control is still effective or not. Her child was able to remove that parental control. So we need to make the parents aware if we want to set healthy boundaries in this respect. Not just the children, but even the parents' involvement is the need of the hour. And lastly, we can design some simpler devices which could only be used for educational purposes. Okay, whatever content that you can search on that would be related to education only. You will not be allowed to go to other website wherein the child could be exposed to harmful content. Okay, basic phones, education only tablets. That's how we can balance both the things, okay, ensuring that the children are able to access the online platforms which are there for educational purposes and all, and at the same time we ensure that they are not following a sedentary lifestyle, they are not exposed to cyberbullying, okay, etc. Now I have framed a practice question for you people. So based on the discussion that we had right now, please try and attempt this particular question. With this, let's move on to the next topic. Now this year we are celebrating International Year of the Woman Farmer. So in this particular backdrop, an article has come up in the Hindu, because tomorrow it is the International Women Day. Okay, and this year we are celebrating International Year of the Woman Farmer. So an article has appeared talking about the deplorable condition of the women farmers in India. This particular topic you can associate with GS paper 1, issues related to women, as well as agriculture, GS paper 3. Now, first and foremost, you need to understand is, when I say feminization of agriculture, what does this actually mean? In simple terms, it means that women are getting more and more engaged in agriculture related activities. That is what is a simple definition. If you go by periodic labor force survey of 23-24, it rightly points out that more than 70% of the rural women workers are engaged in agriculture, and 33% of India's agriculture workforce is basically comprising of women itself. Okay, that is the reason the economic survey of 17-18 rightly pointed out that we are witnessing feminization of agriculture in India. What are the causes of feminization of agriculture in India? First and foremost cause is the outward migration of males. Okay, because of the economic transition, the agriculture sector was not performing well, whereas the industrial sector grew. So male out-migrated from rural areas to urban areas. So ultimately it was the female who has to take care of the agriculture related activities. This has been rightly pointed out by the economic survey of 2017-18 itself. Then because of the economic distress also, the women in rural areas, they started engaging in subsistence farming, okay, animal husbandry, so that they can get some additional sources of income for their family. This is another reason, poverty and all. Then mechanization of agriculture. Now because of mechanization of agriculture, what has happened? The male have moved out to other non-farm activities, because the heavy task which was earlier done by men, okay, that is being performed by the machines itself, and this has actually pushed the women to perform traditional roles. For example, winnowing, harvesting, sowing seeds, rearing livestock, etc. That has again increased the feminization of agriculture, increasing the participation of women in the agriculture, because with the mechanization, the need of male to do the sowing and the harvesting, that has reduced, so they out migrate to urban areas to get better job opportunities, and it is the female who are doing the related agriculture activities, for example winnowing, harvesting, sowing the seeds, etc. Then there is limited mobility of the females also, especially when you talk about the rural areas, the women are not well educated. So when the male counterpart is migrating to urban areas, and we know in the urban areas also the cost of living is very high, and since the woman has to take care of the newborn babies and the families also, and they cannot leave the agriculture land, so because of this limitations which is there on their mobility, they are not able to accompany their male counterparts. So that is another reason why we are witnessing increased participation of the women when it comes to agriculture. Now let's just look into what are the challenges which are faced by the women farmers in India especially. First and the foremost problem is we are seeing feminization of agriculture, but that is not getting translated into increased ownership of land by the women. Okay, this has been outlined by the agriculture census of 2015-16, that when it comes to agriculture workforce, 33% of them are female, but when you look at the land ownership, it is hovering between 11% to 13% only. And since they don't have this land ownership, what is the problem they face is they are not able to get the institutional support. Majority of the policies which are running, okay, for the agriculture sector, they are based on this land ownership thing. So because of this, they are not able to get access to credit related facility, crop insurance facility, irrigation scheme, etc. Because in the program itself, this any beneficiary can get the benefit of a program only when that beneficiary has the land records in his name, okay, or who owns the land titles. And that is the reason when it comes to female who are engaged in agriculture sector, they are not legally recognized as farmers, and this in turn makes them difficult for them to access the institutional support. Then they are facing the dual work shift burden also, because at the one hand they have to take care of the agriculture work, and at the second hand they also have to take care of the newborn babies as well as the elderly population. So they find it difficult to balance both the productive, that is agriculture related work, as well as the reproductive related responsibility, that is childbearing and all, okay. And at the same time they also lack a supportive care ecosystem as well, because in urban areas we are coming up with daycare and all, okay, but that is still missing in the rural areas. They are the one who have to take care of the newborn babies also. So with their newborn babies, they go to the field actually, even right after delivering the baby, the next very day they have to go and work in the fields, okay. And because of this dual burden that they are facing, they are the one who are suffering from anemia and micronutrient deficiency. See the paradox, the one who is providing you diverse kind of nutritious food, the same female is not able to get that nutritious food for her and her children's. Okay, that is the paradox which the article today highlights. And if you go by the National Family Health Survey 5, it rightly points out that the female who are in the reproductive age, roughly 50% of them are suffering from anemia. Because when it comes to the diet in the rural areas, it is usually cereal rich, okay. It does not have other elements, nutritious rich food like your nuts, like your pulses, like your millets, eggs, etc. And when you talk about the food safety net system that we have, that is National Food Security Act also, under that what we are providing? Rice, wheat and coarse cereals, okay, at a subsidized rate. But that is also cereal centric. We don't have pulses, millets and nutrient dense foods. Let's just quickly look into certain prelim pointers related to this National Food Security Act also, because that is important. Previously UPSC has asked a mains question on this thing as well. So when you talk about the National Food Security Act, it is providing food security to around 75% of the rural population and 50% of the urban population. So cumulatively, it is providing the food security to 67% of the entire Indian population. Then under this, ration cards are actually issued in the name of the woman, okay, the adult woman which is there in the household. Now when it comes to the food that you are getting, that is 5 kg per person per month. This is in case of priority households. And then you have Antodaya households. Antodaya households are the poorest among the poor. So they are getting 35 kg per family per month. Okay, so just keep this thing in mind. When it comes to Antodaya households, they are getting 35 kg of food grains per family per month. Okay, so per household. And here when it comes to priority households, they are getting 5 kg per person per month. Okay, so these are the important features when it comes to National Food Security Act. And then monetary support is also provided to pregnant women. For their first child, they are getting around 6,000. They will be getting the same money if the second child is a girl child. Okay, in case of son, they will not be getting this money. Okay, and in case you are not provided with the food, then a food security allowance would also be provided to you. Under the food security, this National Food Security Act, we are providing subsidized, rice, wheat and coarse cereals. But after this Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, the food is provided free of cost. Okay, so these are the major features of National Food Security Act. Now, what all things we need to do so that we, move beyond symbolism. We should not just celebrate this international year for the women farmers. We should actually realize, okay, we should give them this recognition of farmers, which in India we are not giving them. Okay, how we can do that? Let's just understand. So first and foremost, we need to ensure the visibility of women farmers in law, data and policy. For that, first of all, you need gender disaggregated data, that how many females are actually engaged in the agriculture sector. And in the policies that we are implementing for the agriculture sector, we should not go by the traditional approach that whosoever would be holding the land, that person should be considered as farmers. No, we should go by the definition of farmer which is set out in the National Policy for Farmers. According to this identity of farmers is not linked with the land ownership. It is actually linked with the activities, okay, which are performed in the agriculture sector. So if we go by that definition of farmer, then the women workers, okay, agriculture workers who are working on the fields, the minor forest produce gatherers, okay, landless laborers, all those would be considered as farmers. The farmer's identity should not be linked with the land ownership. Okay, so we should use this modern definition of farmer which is provided under the National Policy for Farmers. Then we need to secure that women gets the access to institutional support, okay, when it comes to credit, when it comes to crop insurance, etc., by using this definition of farmer. Okay, and for this we need to ensure effective implementation of equal inheritance provision. Already the law has given that equal inheritance provision, but because of the patriarchal nature of the Indian society, women are not claiming the inheritance rights on their parental land and all. Okay, so that needs to be done. Legal awareness needs to be provided to the women. Nowadays, very few women in the rural areas, they are aware that they also have the inheritance right. So that needs to be done. We need to promote joint spousal titles also. That would enable the the female to easily access the institutional support. And we should provide incentive so that when it comes to the stamp duty, whenever you are registering any property, that should be less if that property is being registered in the name of women. Okay, so that needs to be done. It is already followed in certain areas. That needs to be effectively implemented. That is something that we need to ensure. Then whatever food security programs that we have in India, that should be in alignment with the nutritional objective. That means we need to provide nutritional dense foods, okay, pulses, millets, eggs, etc., so that we are able to address the anemic conditions which are prevalent among the females. Because if a woman is suffering from anemia, you need to understand this, that this is not just going to impact the woman, it is also going to have an impact on the baby which would be born later on. So in order to address this thing, what we need to do, we need to promote cultivation of nutri-cereals, pulses, fruits, vegetables at a small scale, and this needs to be effectively distributed under the PDS, under Anganwadi, school meal programs, etc. And we need to enhance the woman role when it comes to transforming the dietary patterns as well as production patterns at the local level. So we need to go for community driven approaches such as kitchen gardens, women seed banks and localized food planning. Basically, we need to take the help of the SHG network which is there, okay, so that women can play an enhanced role when it comes to transforming the dietary practices. For example, I have worked with the NGO called Pradhan. So therein we used to do this exercise. It was the SHG which used to, have this power that they would be the one who would be deciding that what kind of food should be provided at the Anganwadi centers and all. Okay, so that enhances their power when it comes to deciding the dietary pattern for the children as well. So that is something that we can ensure. And for that, they used to promote kitchen gardens and all, so that, localized based food are provided to the children. Then we need to improve their access to technology and whatever institutional support which the government is providing, that should be provided, so that they are able to make a informed choice when it comes to what kind of crop should be grown. For example, whatever weather related information is there, soil related information is there, all such services should be provided to women also who are engaged in the agriculture sector, so that they can take a informed decision that which kind of crop should be grown, when it should be grown, when it should be harvested. Okay. And in the conclusion, you can end it on this note that on this International Women's Day, the call for rights, justice, action for all women and girls should go beyond symbolism. That means we should give the women who are actually engaged in the agriculture sector this formal and the legal recognition as farmers, and we should allow the females to play a transformational role when it comes to designing the dietary patterns, when it comes to influencing the production pattern, so that we can create a more equitable, resilient and nourished India. You can also end your mains answer on this note that, as highlighted by MS Swaminathan, that somewhere between the farmer's field and your plate, women hold a key to food security. Why MS Swaminathan has pointed out? Because across the globe, more than 50% of the food is actually supplied by women only. Because it is the woman who is actually working in the agriculture fields. It is the woman who is actually doing the animal husbandry thing. Okay. And it is a woman who actually preserve the indigenous knowledge. Okay, when it comes to agriculture practices. And this is something which we have seen in Andhra Pradesh also. By using the SHG network, we are going with the natural farming there. Okay, so this is the reason why we say that women play a key role when it comes to ensuring food security. That's all when it comes to this particular topic. I have framed a practice question for you people. So based on the discussion that we have, please try and attempt this particular question. With this, let's move on to the prelim pointer segment. Now, recently, we are all aware of the conflict which is going on in the Strait of Hormuz region, okay, that is the West Asia conflict. But the reports are pointing out, an explained page has appeared in Indian Express today, that this conflict is not just going to impact the oil and the gas import, which India used to do, but it is also going to negatively impact some of our core industries. Let's just understand what are these core industries. This particular topic you can associate with the prelim segment, that is current events of national and international importance. Now, when I say West Asia as a region, which all countries it actually includes? So it basically includes the 6 countries of Gulf Cooperation Council countries, that is Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and UAE. And it also include other regional economies, that is Iran, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria and Yemen. Okay, now we all know that the Iran has choked this vital choke point, that is Strait of Hormuz, and this is going to result in a wider global supply shock. Why? Because 20% of the world's total oil supply passed through this particular Strait of Hormuz region. And when you talk about India, we are also dependent upon the energy imports from here. So 55% of India's oil import is coming from this particular region, and 50% of India's LNG imports is also sourced from countries like Qatar, and which also passes through this Strait of Hormuz region. Now, presently, although the government has assured that we have adequate stock of the oil and the gas, but keeping this West Asia conflict in mind, the Indian refiners have started purchasing discounted crude oil from Russia. Now, which all core industries are getting impacted because of the West Asia conflict which is going on? Let's try and understand. So first is the diamond. Because when it comes to India, we are a major exporter of gems and jewelry, but it's not like we have huge diamond reserves. Okay, we used to import 40% of the rough diamonds from this West Asia region, and then what we do, we cut the diamond, we do the polishing and on, okay, and then we export that. So diamond industry is going to get impacted, gems and jewelry is going to get impacted. Then our construction related industries are also going to get impacted, because we used to import more than 60% of the limestone and gypsum from West Asia region. Then it is also going to negatively impact the fertilizer industry also, because we used to import more than 60% of the sulfur which is used to make sulfuric acid, and which is vital for fertilizer industries and several chemical based industries as well. And lastly, it is also going to negatively impact the steel making industry. Why? Because we used to import this direct reduced iron from West Asia region. What is this direct reduced iron? So here you are going to remove the iron, this oxygen from the iron ore. How? By using reduces gases. Reducing gases like hydrogen, like carbon monoxide, and we will not allow this iron ore to melt. Okay, so we will be removing the oxygen from iron oxides by using these reducing gases, that is hydrogen and carbon monoxide, and we will be converting that into metallic iron without ensuring the melting of the iron ore. Okay, that is what is reduced iron. And other point that you need to know is from the location point of view. So when I talk about Strait of Hormuz, what is strait? First of all, a narrow water body which connects two large water bodies. So Strait of Hormuz basically connect your Persian Gulf with the Gulf of Oman. And which are the countries which share the border with this? So it is your Iran, and here you can see it is Oman, and here you have UAE. Now, nowadays if you see the pattern of the question being asked by UPSC, they are also asking this thing, that why this particular place was in news. Okay, so let's just look into what are the other context in which this Strait of Hormuz was in news time and again. So last year what happened? The Strait of Hormuz was in news. Why? Because the two crude oil tankers, that is Front Eagle and Adelan, they collided with each other. Okay, so this was one reason, and it was also in news because of Operation Sankalp, which is being done by the Indian Navy, and this is a operation that we are doing since 2019 to basically ensure safe passage of the vessels which are linked with India somehow. Okay, because of the conflict which time and again erupts in this particular region. Okay, so it was in news not just because of this conflict which is going on between USA and Iran, it was also in news because of this collision of two oil tankers, and it was also in news because of the Operation Sankalp. Okay, they can also ask you this question, that Operation Sankalp is related to what thing. Okay, that's all that we need to know with respect to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. So now with a big heart, USA has allowed India to buy Russian oil for the next 30 days. This particular topic you can associate with places in news and the economy segment. Why? Because we'll try and understand the implication of this move on India's economy. Now, although when it comes to Indian government, it has confirmed that now it might not happen that we will be able to get the Russian crude oil at a discounted rate, okay, what we used to get previously. Because China is also emerging as a major competitor, it also wants the Russian crude oil. And it is also because of the fact that because under the pressure of Mr. Trump, India started reducing its import when it comes to Russian crude oil. And again, because of this conflict going on in the West Asia, now again India wants to switch towards Russia. So obviously Russia would not be providing the crude oil at a discounted rate, which it used to provide earlier. Now when it comes to government, it has affirmed, okay, that we have a national fuel reserve of 50 days, 25 days for crude oil and 25 days for petrol and diesel. Now how it is going to negatively impact the economy? Because if we are going to get the crude oil at a higher rate, okay, why I have told you that Russia might not give us the crude oil at a discounted rate, so we will be getting the crude oil at a higher rate. This would lead to cost push inflation. Okay, import led inflation it is also known as. Okay, because the cost of raw material is going to rise. If the price of crude oil, or which is a key raw material, if it is rising, ultimately the price of the final products would also rise. So that is why it is going to lead to import led inflation as well as cost push inflation. And this is going to negatively impact the current account deficit also, which according to this year economic survey, it is around 0.8% of the GDP, that is less than 1% of the GDP. But if we are going to get crude oil at a higher price, that means our import bill would be higher, and ultimately this might bring the CAD above 1% of the GDP. That would be problematic for India, and ultimately this could create complications for monetary policy as well as fiscal policy as well. Monetary policy, why? Because monetary policy is more effective when there is inflation because of the demand factors. Because monetary policy can regulate the demand factors, but if the price is rising because of the supply shock, then in that case monetary policy is not that much effective. When it comes to the fiscal policy, why it would be facing complications? Because to provide a cushion to the common man when it comes to rising price of the crude oil, the government would be providing some sort of subsidies. So if the government is going to provide subsidies, what would happen to its debt to GDP ratio? What would happen to its fiscal deficit? Ultimately, this would lead to, fiscal slippage. It would not be able to adhere to the FRBM targets that it has set for itself under the FRBM Act. So these are the negative implications that we are going to see in the economy. Then another thing that we need to keep in mind is that Brent crude oil prices, which have already escalated 20% in the past week since this conflict has begun, and since the Iran has blocked the Strait of Hormuz, it is expected that it would increase further. Now let's just understand certain film pointers with respect to this Brent crude. Now what is this Brent crude? This is a benchmark which is used widely, which is used to define the oil prices across the world. Okay, this term Brent refers to the Brent oil field which was discovered way back in 1970s, and it became a significant source of oil production since then. 2/3 of all the internationally traded crude oil supplies are, their prices are fixed relative to the price of this Brent crude. And when you talk about this Brent crude, it is light, it is sweet crude. Why it is sweet crude? Because it has a sulfur content less than 0.5%. And why sulfur is not that much desirable when it comes to crude oil? Because it leads to corrosion of the pipes and of the machinery. Okay, and it also emits harmful sulfur dioxide emissions when it is burned. So these are the reason why we don't prefer sulfur. So Brent crude, since it has lower sulfur content, it is referred to be as a sweet crude oil, and it is extracted from the North Sea region. So here is the North Sea. So North Sea basically sharing its border with Norway, then Denmark, then Netherlands, then Belgium, then France, and then UK. You can get a prelims question with respect to this also, that which all countries share the border with this North Sea. Now coming back to Brent crude oil, it has low density, low sulfur content that we have already understood, and it is also simpler to process because it has low sulfur content. And lastly, this price is influenced by various factors including the supply and the demand dynamics, geopolitical events. As we can see right now, because of the West Asian crisis which is going on, what has happened? That Brent crude oil prices have escalated already 20% in the past week. Why it is sweet crude, we have already discussed, because it has a lower sulfur content. That's all that we need to know with respect to this particular article. Let's move on to the next one. Now, the Lok Sabha is going to debate the resolution which is related to removal of the Speaker of Lok Sabha. This particular topic you can associate with the polity section of your prelim syllabus. Now, this aspect becomes important because back to back in 2024-2025, UPSC has asked question on this particular aspect. Okay, so let's understand what are the provisions which are given in the article related to speaker's removal. So Article 94 of the Indian Constitution deal with the vacation, resignation and removal of the speaker as well as deputy speaker. A member holding the office as speaker or deputy speaker of the house would be vacating his office the moment that person ceases to be a member of the house, because we know that a person could be appointed as speaker only when that person is the member of the Lok Sabha. Okay, so once he ceases to be the member of the house, in that case he ceases to be the speaker or deputy speaker also. And if the speaker has to resign, he has to give it in writing to whom? To the deputy speaker. And if the deputy speaker has to resign, he has to give that resignation in writing to the speaker. Now when it comes to the removal of speaker, a resolution needs to be introduced in the house, and that resolution can be introduced only after giving a 14 days notice that we have this intention of moving this particular resolution, and they would be removed from the office by the resolution of House of People. House of People is basically your Lok Sabha, and this resolution needs to be backed by an effective majority. What is effective majority? That is majority of all the then members of the house. Okay, so here we will be taking not the total seats which are there in the house, but which all seats have the representatives. Okay, whichever is the vacant seat, you will deduct that from the total number of seats, and then whatever are the all then members in the house, you will be taking the majority of that. So we need an effective majority to remove the speaker when it comes to the Lok Sabha. Now when it comes to the speaker removal, they can preside or not when it comes to the house, when the house is considering their removal related resolution. The answer is no. They cannot preside when the house is considering the resolution for their removal. They are not allowed to preside the house, but they are allowed to vote in the first instance. But if there is a tie, then in that case they don't get this casting vote right. Okay, so you have to keep this thing in mind that when the House is considering the resolution for removal of the speaker cannot preside over the House, and the speaker do get the right to speak, to participate in that proceeding, and they also get the right to vote in the first instance. They do not get a casting vote in case of a tie. And in the previous times, past instances, the such resolution, okay, for removal of speaker has been introduced thrice. One was in 1954 with respect to G.V. Mavlankar, then for Hukum Singh in 1966, and then for Balram Jhakar in 1987. But you need to make note of this particular fact that none of the speaker has been removed till date. Okay, so these are the facts that you need to know, and you can see that based on the discussion that we have in 2024, 2025, UPSC has asked question on this particular aspect. So based on the discussion that we have, please try and attempt these 2 PYQs. With this, let's move on to the next topic. Now, by using the powers under the Essential Commodities Act of 1955, the central government has directed the oil refiners to maximize the LPG production and to prioritize their domestic supply. This particular topic again you can associate with the economy section. Now, the central government has given this particular directive to the oil companies that you have to prioritize the production of LPG, and you have to ensure that this LPG is used to meet the cooking gas related requirement of the households. Okay, and they are not diverted or they are not used for manufacturing of petrochemical products, okay, which are majorly used by the industrial sector. So the government is basically prioritizing the availability of LPG, especially for the household cooking gas, rather than supplying it for the vehicular and commercial use. And when it comes to India, 60% of India's LPG is actually imported. I told you we basically imported from Qatar, and we also imported from Saudi Arabia. And this is why, because again the Strait of Hormuz is closed. And when it comes to the oil marketing companies, that is your Indian Oil Corporation and Bharat Petroleum Corporation, they produce roughly 40% of India's LPG requirement domestically. Now let's note prelim pointers with respect to this Essential Commodities Act of 1955. So this act was enacted because right after independence we had a lot of issues with respect to food security. We were majorly dependent upon the US for the food aid, that is PL 480. Okay, so at that time, in that backdrop, this Essential Commodities Act was enacted to ensure adequate supply of the food grains at that time, okay, and to prevent hoarding and black marketing of essential goods. Now when it comes to this essential commodity, what does actually this essential commodity imply? Okay, this word has not been explicitly defined in this act. The section 2A of this particular act clearly states that whichever commodity is listed in the schedule of the act, that would be considered to be as the essential commodity, and it is up to the central government. They can add certain commodities under this schedule of this particular act, and they can also remove the commodities. Okay, the objective is basically to control the inflation when it comes to the key essential commodities. And what would be the impact? Now once the central government uses its power under this Essential Commodities Act, this would prevent the wholesalers from stocking the essential product beyond a particular limit. Okay, so the central government can describe that, okay, beyond this particular limit you cannot hoard the commodity. So once it is declared, the government can regulate the production, supply, distribution, and it can also impose the stock limits, so that enough quantity is available in the market and the price do not shoot up. Now when you talk about the legal jurisdiction, I told you the central government can add or remove the commodities from the schedule of the act, which are actually defining that which all commodity would be considered to be as the essential commodities, and this it usually does keeping in light the public interest, and the central government does it after consulting the state government. Usually that's the case. Now in 2020, the parliament amended this particular act, and it placed some limit when it comes to the central government powers under this particular act. Okay, so it stated that only in extraordinary circumstances, like if the country is witnessing war, famine, extraordinary price rise, there's natural calamity of grave nature, only then the central government can use this particular power under the Essential Commodities Act, not in general. Okay, because it also negatively impact the farmers at the end of the day. Okay, because if the price is increasing and you enforce this Essential Commodities Act, the farmers would not be able to realize better, incomes for the products that they are producing. So in that backdrop, this amendment was done so that the central government uses this power only when, the situation necessitates. There is war, there is natural calamity, and there is, rampant rise in the prices of the commodity. In that scenario only, the central government should utilize its power. Then this amendment also amended the central powers when it comes to regulating the stock limits. Okay, so the central government under this act could, say that beyond this particular limit, any trader cannot hold the supply of the agriculture commodity. So the central government is allowed to regulate the stock limit only when the prices have doubled when it comes to horticulture produce, or there is 50% rise in non-perishable agriculture food stuff. Okay, only in this scenario the central government can impose certain stock limits. Then currently the order given by the central government has used clause 3rd and clause 5th of the Essential Commodities Act to regulate the supply limits when it comes to oil marketing companies. That's all that we need to know with respect to this particular topic. Let's move on to the last topic of today's Analyst. Now, in the backdrop of this West Asia conflict, what the TV channels are doing? They are coming up with sensational content, speculative content, and this is actually creating a sign of panic among the public. So to stop this thing from happening, the government has directed the Broadcast Audience Research Council that you stop reporting the TRPs for the TV news channels immediately. With immediate effect, that needs to be stopped, so that the TV channels do not come up with sensational content, do not come up with the speculative content, and they don't create a panic among the public. This particular topic you can associate with the prelims segment, that is the regulatory bodies. Now first of all, let's just understand what is TRPs, that is television rating point. It is a metric which is used to understand that how popular is a television program, how many people are watching that. Okay, more the viewership, higher the TRP rating, and that is the reason these TV news channels are coming up with sensational and speculative content. This would happen, this would happen. Okay, that would raise their TRPs. It is calculated by measuring the viewership of a particular program over a period of time. It is usually a week time. And this TRP rating are determined by the broadcasters and advertisers to determine the popularity of different TV programs. And based on this TRP rating only, the advertising companies would be deciding that whom should we give this particular ad. Okay, because higher the viewership, higher would be your consumer base also. Okay, because in the breaks you will be watching those advertisements, and that is the reason whenever the cricket matches goes on, therein the advertising companies are paying huge price, okay, to showcase their ads. Now how this TRP is calculated in India? So this is done by the Broadcast Audience Research Council in India. It uses barometer which are installed in the television in selected household, and based on that information provided by the barometers, they calculate that what is the viewership of a particular program. The gadget records the data about the channel or program watched by the family members or select people, and this method is also called as people meter. And based on this sampling thing, we extrapolate the data, and based on that we say that okay, this is the popularity of a particular program. Now let's note down certain pointers with respect to this Broadcast Audience Research Council. This is more important rather than TRP. UPSC, it is less likely that they would be asking you how to calculate TRP, but just to give, to create that context, I have explained that to you. Now when it comes to this Broadcast Audience Research Council, this is an autonomous body, non-for-profit body, which is created under the Companies Act of 2013, okay, which is registered under this act. Now this is a joint effort, okay, of Indian Broadcasting Foundation, 60% shareholding, then Indian Society of Advertisers and Advertising Agencies Association of India, both have 20% stakeholding. Now when it comes to this particular entity, how it emerged? So way back in 2000, TV rating in India was provided by two companies, that is the Television Audience Measurement and the NITAM. But there was huge discrepancy among the data, okay, the TRPs that they were providing. Then in 2001, what happened? This Television Audience Measurement, it acquired INTAM. So in a way it created a monopoly, and then there was nothing to validate the data that it is providing with respect to TV rating. Okay, and there were huge discrepancy when it comes to the TV rating that was provided by this TAM. At that time, that Doordarshan was the most watched channel when it comes to news, also when it comes to other programs, Rangoli, Chitrkar, etc. was going on. But it used to provide a poor TV rating to Doordarshan channel as compared to other channels. Okay, so that ultimately led to a debate, ignited a debate in the parliament in 2008. And in this particular backdrop, it asked the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, they asked the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India that you recommend something, how we can, ensure transparent TV rating. So in that respect, the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, it gave the idea of self-regulation through an industry-led body, and that led to the creation of this particular entity, that is Broadcast Audience Research Council. So in 2014, the government issued policy guidelines for television rating agencies, and in 2015, this body was credited to provide the TV ratings in India. And currently, it is only the primary body which is coming up with the TRP thing, okay, because this TAM was did away with. Okay, it exited the TV viewership measurement mechanism which was there. So the only body which is coming up with the TRPs is this Broadcast Audience Research Council. That's all that we have to learn today. Quiz would be coming right up next, so don't forget to practice the quiz and check how much you were able to grasp today. Till then, keep smiling, keep learning. Have a great day, all of you.